The Oregon Ducks fell just short of making the college football playoff in 2023. They now undergo a big transition moving to the Big Ten. How will they perform? Let's find out. So if you're looking at the strengths of this team, I think you got to start with the wide receiver core. You bring back Tej Johnson, maybe the best slot receiver in the country, over an 1,000-yard guy, and he definitely could be a first-team All-American this year. Probably projected to be, actually. He's maybe the best receiver in the country. And then to go with him, you bring in Evan Stewart, a really talented receiver transfer from Texas A&M, formerly number one wide receiver recruit in the country. He never quite put it all together at Texas A&M, but he was still good. And I think he'll be even better and maximize his talent with the new offensive staff and the weapons that surround him, and consistent quarterback play at Oregon. And then you're also deep at this position because you're going to have Gary Bryant Jr., a Trayshawn Holden, a Jurion Dickey, who's 5-star freshman, and then you bring in another 5-star recruit, a wide receiver this year. So you're really deep at receiver. And then at tight end, you also have Patrick Herbert and Ferguson there. So you've got two quality tight ends as well. So lots of options on the perimeter. And then the line of scrimmage play, I think with Cornelius and Josh Connerly, you have one of the best tackle duos in the country, and therefore one of the best offensive lines in the country. And then the D-line is really good as well, with Jordan Birch coming back, Mateo Uiagalelei in his second year off the edge. You bring in another talented edge rusher like Elijah Rushing, 5-star recruit. So the defensive line should be really good. If you're looking for weaknesses on the team, there aren't many, but I think you would say defensive experience, just because you lose some defensive talent, and then you replaced it in part with some transfers. So like on the interior, you bring in like a Houston transfer. Will he work out right away? And then the secondary is the other spot. I don't think it's a huge concern because you bring in Jabbar Muhammad from Washington, who's a lockdown corner. And then you also have either Jaleel Florence and Dante Manning across from him, who could be good corners as well. Safety, maybe it's a problem. Probably the least certain of the spots on Oregon's roster right now. But I think it'll develop throughout the season, and I think the defense will still be plenty strong enough. And I think Oregon's a very good team. So let's get into the record predictions. Idaho should clearly be a win. Not much to say on that game. And then a home game against Boise State could actually be kind of tricky. I was surprised to see Malachi Nelson didn't win the quarterback job. The Maddox kid won it at Boise State. So that's something of interest. Genty at running back is one of the best in the country. You bring in Chris Marshall, a transfer, really talented, but he's always had off the field issues. If he puts it, if he's able to, keep his head, he could be a really dangerous wide receiver for Boise State. And Boise State could be one of the best group of 5 teams, but Oregon's one of the best teams, period. And at home, they should beat Boise State before the Civil War game on the road against Oregon State. Oregon State loses so much. You lose DJU, Jonathan Smith, Damian Martinez, Jack Velling, Aiden Childs. Pretty much your whole roster has just been depleted with the departure of your coach. And Oregon should clearly beat this version of this Oregon State team. But I am glad that they're keeping the rivalry going. Then off a bye, pretty early bye, because you'll then have to play 8 consecutive games. So not the best bye structure for Oregon this season. But off the bye, you go on the road to face UCLA, a UCLA team that I think is a little underrated this year. I think people think they'll just be bad, and I think they'll be okay. With Garbers back at quarterback, bringing in Eric Bieniemy, but I think they lose too much defensively, especially on the defensive front. Where Oregon, with that offensive line, and with Jordan James, I think emerging as a star at running back around this point in the season, Oregon will control the line of scrimmage too much and will beat UCLA. And then a home Friday night game, I think for Michigan State, I don't think they'll be able to go on the road on a Friday night to beat an Oregon team that I would say is probably should be preseason ranked number 2 in the country. And now the most difficult game, or maybe the most difficult game for Oregon all season, is versus the Ohio State Buckeyes. I think you look at these teams, and they match up pretty evenly. You look at wide receiver, you look at D lines versus O lines, running game, and I think the edge here, for me at least, is going to be quarterback. Since I think this will be a close game, the combination of Oregon being at home and then them having a quarterback that I trust in the big game after seeing what Dylan Gabriel did again in the Red River Shootout last year. He did something I haven't seen Will Howard do, and maybe Will Howard can do that, but for predictions purposes, I'm just going to lean on the home team that I think has the edge at quarterback, and I'm going to give Oregon a 6th straight win to start the season. After the Ohio State game, I think you have actually a game that'll be a lot closer than it should be. I think you're coming off of a really emotional victory that probably takes a lot out of you, and then you're going to have a short week going on the road. It's just a really tough spot. But I do think, fortunately, like if this were, say, the Wisconsin game here, or maybe even the UCLA game, instead of the Purdue game, I would probably be taking UCLA or Wisconsin, just like a trap upset game. But because Purdue, I think, could be one of the worst teams in the Big Ten this year, I think Oregon is able to escape in what's almost a crazy upset. And then after that, you get a home game against Illinois, which I think you win. Illinois, I think, could be a decent team this year. Brett Bielema, pretty good coach. Luke Altmaier could be pretty good at quarterback. But I think the defense is going to struggle, especially against an offense as good as Oregon's. I think Oregon improves to 8-0. And now the other game that might be the toughest of the year for Oregon, and that's on the road in Ann Arbor. I think Michigan is a team that matches up physically with Oregon. Oregon's not going to control the line of scrimmage the way they can against some other teams. I think both teams will try to run the ball, but both teams will be stout defensively. I think Michigan's defense a little bit better than Oregon's. They're at home, and that home field advantage is enough for me to give the win to Michigan. I think what I'm looking at here is Oregon's playing. This is going to be their 6th consecutive game playing. So this early bye week hurts you a little bit, whereas Michigan's going to be more well-rested and at home. And I think they match up well enough to pull off a big win for them. And Oregon drops their first game of the season. And now you come back home to versus the Terrapins of Maryland. And I think you bounce back, and now you're 9-1. Maryland, I think, sneaky good, maybe. MJ Morris, I think, is going to play quarterback for you. And Maryland's consistently been a tier above the bad teams in the Big Ten, but clearly not as good as like a Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan. They've been right in that middle ground, and so I think that continues. Oregon's in that top tier, Maryland's below that, and now you go to Camp Randall to verse the Wisconsin Badgers. Could be a pretty tough spot. I think ultimately I don't really trust Tyler Van Dyke against this level of opponent. He's going to start for Wisconsin this year, and I don't think that offense will put enough points up against this Oregon defense to keep up with the high-powered Oregon offense, and Oregon improves to 10-1, then gets a very late bye week. So I think when I'm looking at this Oregon schedule, I think some point when you play 8 straight games with no bye, I think you're probably going to drop one, and I went with the toughest road game, being Michigan. It's towards the back end of this 8-game stretch, and I think you're going to lose one. Maybe it's Wisconsin, but I went with Michigan. And now off a bye, you'll verse a Washington team. You lost to Washington twice last year. I think Oregon's really going to want this win, be very motivated, well-rested, at home against a Washington team not nearly as good as they were last year. I think Oregon blows out Washington and is able to finish the season 11-1, and should be good enough to send them to the Big Ten championship, and definitely should be good enough to send them to the college football playoff. All right, guys, thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, feel free to check out my other videos on other teams' season predictions for 2024, as well as my full-length videos for entire conference predictions and playoff predictions coming soon. Thank you guys for watching. Bye.